Good morning. This is Paul Johnson with Film Obsessive, and I'm here today with Laura Plancarte, who is producer, director, and co-writer of the new film Mexican Dream, and who is taking the time to speak to us from London. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much, Paul, for inviting me. I'm super happy to be here in your program and with your audience, so thank you.
And I am super excited to discuss Mexican Dream. But before I begin with some thoughts and some questions, can I just have you tell our audience in your own words what this film is?
Well, thank you, Paul. So Mexican Dream, it's a film done in collaboration with the main character. Her name is Maria Magdalena, but in Spanish and in short, we call her Male. That comes from Malena, because sometimes Magdalenas are called Malenas. And I wanted to make a film. When I started, I wanted to make a film that showed a different perspective on Latin American women. Because in my experience, I have seen many films where Latin American women are portrayed fighters, but also miserable, like struggling, but just like crying, and a lot of the times in a submissive kind of very passive role. And I think obviously there's some women that are like that, but many women that we are Latin Americans, we're not that. And I wanted to find this woman, this woman that could be the character of the film. And so actually through a friend of mine, I sent out a call to women in Mexico that were willing to have a Zoom interview with me and explore the idea of making a film, a documentary about their life. And I started interviewing many women. And the day I met Male, I knew immediately, Paul, now because you have seen the film, I knew immediately that she was the woman I was looking for. Not only because she's incredibly charismatic, but it comes across in a very natural way, her force. And also I was very intrigued by her story. And I thought, not only this is the opportunity to show a different kind of portrayal of femininity in Latin America, but also it's an opportunity to see also a woman that comes from an impoverished background, but through a different lens. Because unfortunately, what sometimes we do is that we portray people as the job they do, but not as the person they are. And when I interviewed Male for that first time, it really attracted my attention that she told me, so I was in an abusive relationship, so I'm a victim, a survivor actually of domestic abuse, but I left that relationship and I needed to flee my hometown and go and work in Mexico City as a domestic worker so I could send money for my children because her ex-husband was awful, let's put it just that way. And but I'm being able, to build my own house. And in the process, I fell in love again, and she was very enthusiastic about it, which I found incredible because she wasn't lost just in the trauma of the past. And she told me, and now I want to have another child. I want to reconnect with my children because the ex-husband took the custody of her children away when she needed to go to Mexico City, actually, to be able to send money for them. So she told me, I want to reconnect with my children, regain custody, but also she told me I want to have another baby. But for her to have another baby, she would need to do IVF because she had had her tubes tied due to the abuse of the previous relationship. And for me, at that point, Paul, I was making the same face you're making. And it was, wow. So you already have children, 3. They are almost about to become teenagers. You lost their custody. You have a complicated relationship with them. You are finishing your house, you have a new partner, but you want to add to everything now, going through IVF and paying a really costly treatment and all of that, and all of this together, I found, wow, it broke completely all the ideas that I had of what could be her dreams. they were shattered on that initial conversation, and I thought, she's the person I want to work with.
She's an incredible subject. And I'm thinking, so at this moment, this is during COVID, correct? And what you have at this point is you have a protagonist and you have a story. But what kind of intentions did you have for making a film at that point?
So basically, we met just before the pandemic. Like the pandemic at that point, it was January 2020, and the pandemic hadn't exploded, except in China at that point. So we were able at that point to meet, and the idea was to start, getting to know each other to be able to do the film. But then is when COVID hit, everything was closed, and she and I had started to having these Zoom interviews that we would have Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 1 hour and a half each day. And I told her that's the way I work, so we can really get to know each other, and I can understand you, and you can feel if you want to work with me also, if you feel comfortable. But then is when the pandemic closed everything. So the idea that I could be, going to Mexico and filming with her in her hometown for long periods of time was basically out of the question. So I thought, and I said to her, look, these sessions, we need to keep on going because this is how you and I create this bond. But a film cannot be told by Zoom interviews. So what I'm going to do, Male, is I'm going to send you an iPhone with some accessories like a tripod, microphones, and everything. And basically, through your iCloud account of the iPhone, I'm going to be able to download the material you film. And in your old phone, I'm going to be on Zoom and I'm going to direct remotely. And she was super happy about this because, as you have seen, Male is a person that loves adventures, learning new things. So for her, it was an incredible situation of learning now, becoming a filmmaker and everything. And for me, it was an incredible, experience to also collaborate since the beginning with the character. It's something that I hadn't done before. So since the beginning, it's not just me observing her, but it was me, giving her these tools so she could actually also film herself and make decisions. And I would be directing on Zoom, but also sometimes she would go on her own and take decisions to film things without having me on Zoom. And as the lockdowns eased, I would travel to her hometown, and then I would film her and her relatives and the home and that. And we worked like that for 2 years. And
Wow.
after 2 years is when we changed. But I want to see that before, if you have another question before I continue.
Well, so there must have been a moment in there where you made the decision that either that wouldn't work or that wasn't exactly the film you wanted to make. And as viewers of Mexican Dream will find out, the film that they watch is something similar yet very different. Was it difficult to make it that decision? And could you have made the film that you envisioned?
So what happened after 2 years of working that way is two things I think happened at the same time. And is one, I said, okay, we've been working for 2 years. I want to see how this blends. So without an editor or anything, I did like a kind of very rough cut of material of footage shot by Malin with the iPhone and material shot by me without a crew. And I put it together and I found it really interesting. But I found that, as you have seen Mexican Dream, I like cinema and I like to make cinematic films. And by blending the material, it felt choppy. And it felt also that it didn't flow as well. And me knowing Male, I thought that the material didn't do justice to her, that she was far more interesting and far more powerful than what we had been able to capture working, part me, part her, all of this. And I traveled to Mexico, to her hometown, because at that point, after exactly in the same time, she regained custody of two of her children. so of Giovanni and of Fatima. So I remember really well, and I traveled to her hometown because at that point I thought, well, maybe, it's a matter of adjusting and reworking and doing certain things, but I was with that. But I remember meeting her children, and I got into Giovanni's room because he agreed to be interviewed by me. And I remember setting up the camera and everything, and he was very quiet. And then I said, can I record? And he said, yes. I pressed recording, and I hadn't even asked a question, Paul. And the boy, he wasn't 15 years old yet, and tears started rolling down his cheeks.
Oh,
And he was just crying and crying and crying. And I just looked at him and I got scared. And I thought, her children are hurt and they have gone through many things because since they were born, they were obviously witnesses of the domestic violence in their home. And even though Male needed to leave them in order to be able to find money to be able to support them financially, they felt abandoned and they had a lot going on. And I felt at that point that, they were really young, that they were accepting to be interviewed. They were accepting to be in the film because their mom wanted to be on the film. But I wasn't sure they wanted to be in the film. And I got worried because we all have heard stories, really young people commit suicide, doing those things. And I said, imagine that this situation, because of making a film, something tragic happens. And I don't think maybe this is going to add anything good to them right now. So I said to Male, and he told me, yes, how was the interview? And he said, I told her I couldn't really talk to him because he's just crying, and it's really sad, it's really difficult. And she told me, yes, I'm very worried too. What are we going to do? I don't know what to do. Like my relationship with them is just starting. And I thought, and then is when the idea came to me. And I said, as I was able to propose to her, because of the pandemic at some point, I'm going to send you this phone. Let's do this film in collaboration filming. I told her, why don't we do something different? How about you and I kind of write a treatment, like you and I know the truth of what we have discovered in these past 2 years. So you and I together, we're going to do like a summary, and we're going to think about how we're going to tell your story, and we're going to stage it. And we're going to tell your children if they want to participate, because it's very different to reenact something, but not being caught by the camera, but to be able to place yourself in front of the camera and say, okay, I am going to do a scene that I have lived many times with my mom. That is when her children rejected her many times. So I'm going to play it for the camera. And I'm going to do that, but that's very different than having me capturing moments in the real reconnection of them, that they feel obviously exposed, that they forget that I am there with a camera, and then suddenly I have the material and the footage where suddenly, they had a terrible moment. So the children really liked the idea. Male really liked the idea. So Male and I started working on that. And we basically wrote together for like 8 months.
This is an incredibly brave decision, and it connotes a great deal of trust that you have in Male, your subject, who would become your collaborator and co-writer here. It also strikes me as, I mean, to my thinking, it's unprecedented, really. Was there anything in your background, your experience, your education, maybe that made you think this is a way to make this film? Or did it just seem like the right thing to do at that moment?
It felt the right thing to do. I think it would solve kind of everything in a way, because it would take out this ethical dilemma of um, I don't want to expose them. I don't want, but at the same time, how can we do something authentic? How can we
Mhm.
build it? And then I had, watched, like Chloe Zhao's film, um, she's American, you know, that she did the very well-known film Nomadland, but she did
Hmm.
that with actress Frances McDormand. But
Right.
before, she had done The Rider, and she had done other films. And even though those films are presented as fiction, her collaboration, for example, with The Rider, right now I forgot the name of the boy that is the main protagonist. In reality, he did have that injury that happens in her film. In reality, he does do the rodeo. So in a way, he's kind of doing a reenactment, like his sister in the film is his sister. So it's kind of what we have seen now in film, is that the boundaries between documentary fiction are kind of becoming blurry. So I have seen her work and I really like her work. And there's also Italian, you know, neorealists that work kind of in similar ways. And I thought to myself, why not try something different? And for me, like as a documentary filmmaker, at the moment, it seemed the right decision, because sometimes it had happened to me before that you work and then you feel that maybe you exposed your character, even if you then in the edit, you try to take away all sensationalism and you try to just put the things that are the real necessary bones to be able to tell the portrait, you know, the story, and to do a fair portrait. But there's always that kind of thing where I have felt uncomfortable. And some people might think, well, when I was taking that decision, I remember I was working with a producer and he was telling me, you are not being, you know, have the courage enough. You need to separate yourself and not be so involved with your characters. And I told him, you know, that's easy for you to say because you don't know them and you haven't had that relationship with them. But for me, I rather finish the relationship with you than to actually feel that I'm going to go against Malia and her children, because at that point I felt that bringing a pure observational documentary to Malia and her children would only bring harm future for them, because I
Of
think they
course.
needed to live their own thing in their own terms. So for me, it's the
And
moment where I thought, yeah, so
sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to add, and it allowed you to make a film that was expressly cinematic. I mean, as I started watching it, I had not read the press notes, and was thinking to myself that this is the most cinematic documentary I've ever seen, until a point just a few minutes in when I realized it was so cinematic it literally could not be a traditionally observational documentary. But part of the risk there too strikes me is that um your subject has to be able to perform also as an actor, conveying herself. And that cannot be easy to do. And credit to Molly for really doing just a wonderful job there in front of the camera in the resultant film.
I think Malay is extraordinary. And I think she deserves all of the recognition from everybody, because the collaboration was something very interesting, because you've seen the film, Paul. There's a moment, for example, that she's standing in front of the mirror and she, you know, cries and has a very emotional moment. And it's not that I directed her and told her, look, Male, you go in front of the mirror and now you're going to cry, because that's not our collaboration. How it was, it's not that when I talk about writing together, it's not that we wrote a scene, here is where Malik cries. It was, here we're going to do the moments that you lived at work in your little room by yourself when you didn't have custody of your children. And the way she interprets that comes from her. And for me, what makes it really empowering is that, and that's for me was the lesson, is that it's very different that I would have caught Male with my camera in the moment where she was crying, but she didn't want to be seen. And it's very different that Male at that point, when I told her, okay, so we are here in your room, here is the moment where you express what was it to be without your children? And she decides to put herself in front of a mirror with a picture of her children. And she just told me, give me some time. And I just moved back, and she just cried on her own. But in that moment, she's taking the decision deliberately. I want other women, other families, other men to see me crying and what it felt to have had my children taken away from me, and that I needed to work in a foreign, in a faraway place, away from my family, away from everything. And for me, that makes the difference, is that she is the one taking the decisions and saying, I'm going to communicate this. And for me, Paul, this has been a revelation, because I wasn't expecting it. And it actually shook everything, because it really, makes me want to continue working this way, because it's incredible to be able to be in the same boat, and it's incredible to be able to collaborate. And obviously, to be able to do that, you first need to spend like at least 2 years with the characters, as if you are making a pure observational documentary, because first they need to get used to being filmed, they need to get used to the camera, they need to build this bond with me. And slowly afterwards we can make decisions together and we can decide this. But it was incredible that, and this might sound strange, Paul, to you, but if you look at certain segments of the material that Male and I shot previously, when she was doing the phone and I was going on my own to film her, if you see parts of that and you see the actual film, there's more naturality in the staged film when she reenacts herself than actually in the material when we were working the other way. And for me, this has been very interesting. It has like a discovery, and I think that this is my own interpretation, And what I thought that happens is that when people feel at ease, and that in their own terms, they're going to be able to tell you and express how their lives have been, their barriers also go down, because they are the ones that are making the decision, and they are not worried they're losing control of having you there filming them, and then that you're going to capture the moment where they fight or they look bad or whatever it is. And it's really, as you see in the film, I don't think there is one moment in the film where you see her acting or you see her relatives acting. I don't know what you think.
I don't feel that she is performing. It feels very genuine and very authentic. And frankly, I'm just a little gobsmacked by that, given that she, is a woman with really no experience, no training. I mean, I know that non-professional actors can act in roles and star, but here she is, essentially the subject of the film, carrying it throughout every scene and working through some pretty, traumatic material. Voice memo from her daughter, just as one example. I mean, it is really a lot to carry and to react to. And I don't know how much you thought about this, but it also strikes me that when that's the case, your film really rests on that performance. And if it feels contrived or inauthentic or, poor in some other regard, I mean, that's deleterious to your film. But it really is. I think the end result is really remarkable. I did just want to ask you quickly too. How did the process go then for casting the other roles in the film?
So basically, nobody is acting somebody that they are not. So like her parents are her parents. Edgar, the boyfriend, is who used to be her boyfriend. For the breakup, we had to do, so basically we had to film, the actual film was done in 2 weeks, because exactly, they are not actors. So nobody can take so much time out of work. So we needed to film it in 2 weeks. And then we had to do a pickup shoot later in the year, because she had broken up with Edgar. So we needed to do that part. But it was, everybody's like, her friend Carla is her cousin, the other girl that works with her and that is her friends, the one that they go out dancing. Juanito, he is a chauffeur. And the doctor is the doctor that does the other women that are doing the IVF treatment are all a group of women that Male got to know, and that's how she changed her mind about the IVF. So everybody, there's no actors, and when we enter the home of the wealthy society in Mexico, so they are also not actresses. So through a different person, I sent out a call of women because that is the only thing that the women that are there are not the real people that now Mali doesn't work in that house in Mexico City because she's back at her home. She has her business. She finished her home. And so she quit her job. So that the fact that, like I tell you, the reenactment is factual of the things that happened. So the women that appear, the wealthy women that appear in the film are not, they are the only ones that they are not the actual people with whom Male worked. So basically we sent out a call of women from that sort of society that would be willing to appear, and they agreed, except they didn't want their faces on camera, which was great because for me, I think the manicure hands and the jewelry and everything said much more than to actually see their faces. And actually the film is about Male, not about them.
Mhm.
And for me, it was really interesting to film that scene because I remember meeting these women and I could be open with them and honest. And I told them, look, every person that will see this film because of the type of audience are not going to like you because they have a preconceived, a preconceived, prejudged idea that you are wealthy, stupid, everything has been easy for you, and there's no difficulty in being you. But I have never believed, Paul, in making like a cartoon, there's no purpose. So I told them, so what I propose, but it's up to you, is that the conversation that you guys have, tell me what is difficult of being you, being the women that live in this sort of elite in Mexico City. So that's what I propose, but you guys are going to talk about whatever you want. It's up to you. And then, Paul, they started talking very fluently. And for me, I had never heard that story before. And I felt really bad, actually. And I feel really sorry because what they were describing, it was kind of like, in a way, I don't want to say it roughly, but it's like being a really high cost kind of prostitute in a way. Like you need to be available at all times, look great. If they cheat on you, you take it. And as you're getting older, you fear because if they leave you, you don't have anything probably under your name. And what are you going to work in? So you need to actually be able to tolerate many things that probably you don't want to tolerate because there's no other way. And I felt very strange. And then is when I thought, and the same when I met the women that they were doing the IVF, and I thought, this film obviously is about Male, but I think it's like a portrait of femininity, that at the end, we're all women. Like, even though we live very different realities, mine and them, and this group and the other and everything, but we're all women and we have things in common. And I thought, I want to make this film that can show the struggle of having to, juggle so many things when women actually also need to, they become moms, and what society still expects from mothers. And it doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, or in the middle. And all of those kind of issues. And yeah, it was very interesting for me.
Laura, where and when will people be able to see Mexican Dreams? I know it's on the festival circuit right now.
Yes, exactly. It's in the festival circuit at the moment. And we had the really great news that it won in Docs Barcelona, and we got distribution in Spain, which for me has been incredible. We're going to have theatrical release in Spain. The distributor promised at least 60 cinemas broadcasting VOD. And I'm hoping crossing everything, that we can get a deal like that in the US and Canada and in Mexico and other parts. Because I think when I presented the film in Hot Talks, and it was for the first time I saw it with not a Spanish-speaking audience, and I realized, I confirmed that this is a film that is universal, that is not for a Latin audience. It's a film that is universal because it's about being a woman, it's about family, it's about parenting, it's about love relationships. And I think it can touch anyone. So I'm really crossing everything, Paul, and I hope that soon I could tell you, Paul, tell your audience and invite them to watch it somewhere in the United States.
I hope they get the chance to do that too soon too as well, Laura. It is a film that really speaks to second chances in life, and I love your subject, Male's optimism and perseverance and resilience, and I also admire yours in making this film under some complex circumstances and with a really unique kind of hybrid approach that I think works incredibly well for this film, and which I'm in particular drawn to. So thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you so much to all the audience of Film Obsessive. I've been very happy talking to you guys, and Paul, thank you.
Thank you.